What's up, guys? So I'm here with Dr. Nick, PT from 3DMJ, and we're going to talk about my injury today. I know a few of you guys had a few questions after seeing me post about my hamstring injury, and so we're going to cover a lot of it today.
Yeah.
So thanks for coming by, man.
My pleasure, man. My pleasure.
Yeah, nice shirt.
Always
I didn't come in with the
representing.
shirt. Yeah, I didn't come with the shirt today, but
So I was a few minutes late coming here today. It's because I walked out of my house with a different shirt on, and I said, no, I gotta represent the team. So here we are.
Nice. Okay, so yeah, where do we start? I guess, so yeah, I suffered a hamstring tear, partial tear, right? You say? Just doing RDLs last week, so we want to kind of cover like a few things about injuries and just my personal injury and just all on that. So I guess we start, where do we start?
Well, I just want to say that if you haven't seen that video of you doing that deadlift, you gotta check it out. It's pretty gnarly. Like you don't see anything like pop, but you see like at the bottom of the RDL like the little like jerk.
Yeah,
I think everyone
yeah.
watching that just grabs their own hamstring. It's like,
I
oh,
wish I
man.
got the other side too. The first set too, the set before that, I had the other side too. But then I was like, yo, get around the other side so I can get a different angle, and then
Yeah.
that's what happened. But yeah.
But my original thoughts when I first saw that, and obviously you tagged me in the post, was just the overall level of maturity, like of what you wrote in the caption. And so this is like hours or minutes after the injury happened. So you don't really know what to expect. You don't know if this is going to be a season-ending injury, career-ending injury, but you went on social media and you put yourself out there and you were just like, look, like this happened. Could be from a couple different reasons. Not going to panic. We're going to get it checked out by me, and we'll go from there and see what happens. But I think a lot of people don't take that initial like thought when they suffer an injury like that. The first thing is like, that's it, like it's over, and all of a sudden like pull back from social media, pull back from loved ones and everything, and it's just like stuck in your own head, and then you start Googling things and looking up other things on social media, and there's just this influx of information that usually isn't good at that time. And I think you did a great job of just kind of keeping calm and just doing your thing and getting it checked out.
Yeah, man. Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, part of that was from like that past injury I had with the whole back. I don't even know exactly what's wrong with the back. I don't know if there was like a herniated disc or I feel like it was, because there's times where I couldn't even walk. But who knows? I never got an MRI. But yeah, because I've gotten through that. That took like a few years to get through. I was working with shout out to Diana. I don't know if she watches all this stuff.
Diana.
Yeah, she's real good. She helped me out getting through that, and then later on, I think like 2 years later, I met you.
Yep.
Met with you. So yeah, getting through that definitely helped me.
For sure. And that
was rough.
That
Sure.
when we started working together with your hamstring, it was almost like we were not starting from square one. We were like 10 steps ahead because we knew each other already.
True.
I knew that you knew the pain conversation and the different multifaceted nature of pain and all those things. So you knew all that. I know you have a good head on your shoulders. I know that you have Berto doing your programming, so I know that your programming is pretty much intelligently structured. I know your technique is good, so that just checks off so many boxes already that maybe I would have to start with like a regular athlete, a regular general population person. So I think that the back injury really kind of got us moving a little bit, and we kind of worked through the process with that. And as far as what it was, and we'll probably talk about this with the hamstring too.
Yeah.
It's not so important as to see like what it is. Like if it is a herniated disc, if it isn't a herniated disc, I can almost guarantee you that both of us have some kind of herniated discs in our back if we get an MRI. But we just kind of live with them. Like it's kind of normal. Over the age of 30 to 40, we're going to have some abnormalities on an MRI, especially in the spine. So it may be there, it may not be there, but not to go down that rabbit hole, but sometimes those things like little tears or herniated discs that we see on MRIs, think of it almost like kindling to a fire, and it's just kind of sitting there and we're living our life like nothing's happening, and then if something happens, like if there's an injury in the area, or if there's an area or a time in your training, like when you are super stressed out and sleep is not good, and you're pushing it in the gym, and and all this kind of cascade of things just kind of pile up, then maybe that thing starts to get a little symptomatic. But for the most part, those things aren't red flags, sometimes yellow flags, but for the most part, they're, you know, completely normal, especially people that work out and, you know, like us and your audience.
Nice. Okay, so I think let's answer, I want you to answer a few questions that a lot of people were asking me. I think one of them was, how common is this? Like, is this a common injury that happens? Like, I think a lot of people got scared. Like, a few of my friends, more specifically, were like, you know, I don't even want to RDL anymore because they saw the video of me RDLing and pulling my hamstring. So yeah. Can you talk about how common it is, if it is at all, a common injury that you kind of see?
It's a good question. I would say a torn hamstring, and so if you hear the word like pulled hamstring, it's pretty much like a tear, like some kind of just tear within the muscle. So do I see hamstring tears with RDLs? Not often. Usually hamstring tears happen with sprinting, change of direction, things like that, like in field sports. I know Eric Helms tore his hamstring, I think doing like hill sprints or high intensity training. But if you ask Eric, he'll explain that he was kind of burning the candle at both ends, and he, in hindsight, he kind of says, you know, doing high intensity sprinting at the time probably wasn't a good thing. I think he was even going through a lot of emotional family things and some loss, I think, at the time too. So just kind of that, again, multifaceted nature of these kind of injuries and stuff like that. But to answer your question, not super common. One of the most protective things you could probably do for your hamstrings is Romanian deadlift, just because you're stretching it under load, and the more that we do that, the more resilient it's going to get. So if anyone wants to prevent a hamstring injury, or at least not prevent, but increase the resiliency of their hamstrings, I would probably say some kind of hip hinge is a good idea. But so yeah, not super common, although I suffered almost the exact same injury maybe like 8 years ago. I was in grad school. And I wouldn't say that I was super stressed out or like sleep deprived. I'm way more sleep deprived now with two babies than I was then. But I was just doing my RDLs like normal. And at the very bottom, it just like, I swear I felt like someone kicked me in the back of the leg.
That's exactly what I thought. I thought someone was messing with me. I turned around, no one's around me. I'm like, oh, damn.
Yep.
I definitely pulled it.
Yeah, and this was before I was, like I said, I wasn't even graduated from school yet, so I didn't know much about pain or injury, and I just thought my hamstring was completely like torn off my pelvis. Like it just felt like it was like ripped off the bone, and
that's exactly what I felt too. I thought.
Put the bar down, just walked around, and and it hurt, but it was like not too bad, and then I tried to just do like a hip hinge, like standing up, and as soon as I went like an inch, it was like bam, I just felt that pain. So I was like, all right, I guess I'm not doing that. But this is back in like my bro days, so naturally what I did was I continued my workout and saw what I could do and saw what I couldn't do. So I think the bro in me was causing me to push it and do too much, but in hindsight that probably wasn't the thing I would recommend anyone. I would say, well, hang in there, don't leave the gym just yet. Like, let's see what we could do, see how bad it is, test some things out. So that's what I did, and I ended up doing like a different hamstring curl variation, did some knee extensions, and I think like some hack squats or something at the time. But after that, I couldn't Romanian deadlift for quite some time. I didn't have any structured rehab. I didn't go to a physical therapist. I just kind of let it rest and gradually kind of started hinging again. But for a very long time, that just the apprehension of like my own mind just going into the RDL, like I would say for over a year, every time I went to RDL, I would always think, like my mind would be on that spot rather than like the movement or on both hamstrings. It would just be like right on that spot every time I went down for my lift. So that's a long-winded question. Long-winded answer to your question.
No, that opens up a lot, because I did want to ask you too, if something like this happens, like say, just like what happened to me, well, what do you recommend that an athlete do?
Yeah.
Like, because for me personally, when that happened to me, I just was kind of walking it off like you did, like you said, and then I was just trying to like kind of move a little bit, see what hurts and what didn't hurt. So I was bending my knee, it didn't really hurt, and then my adrenaline was kind of up. I told him this the other day or last week. So my adrenaline was up, so obviously I'm not gonna really feel much. So once I sat down, took like a few breaths and just calmed down, and then I started. That's when the pain started coming.
Yeah.
And then so when I bent, it started hurting, fully extending, hurt. So I'm like, all right, something's up. You know what I mean? And then from there, some girl at the gym kind of gave me like a icy hot, I think it was Biofreeze, and just sprayed it all on the back of my hamstring, and then I just trying to walk it off. But I didn't continue to train just because I didn't know, I didn't know if it was good or bad. So what do you recommend like a person do just for viewers, if something happens to them, maybe they can kind of like take a tip out of this?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a very practical, like, what to do if this happens at the gym.
Yeah.
First thing I would say, well, let's talk about like if you feel any kind of pain at the gym. So this injury aside, say you feel some shoulder pain. First thing I would do, like say we're doing
pressing
like
or something.
Pressing, yeah. Say we're doing like a dumbbell bench press, and we feel like a sharp pain in the shoulder on like the 4th rep of a set of about 10. First thing I would do is maybe just continue, like just keep going and see, like, is it gonna hurt again? Was it like a one-time just weird kind of rep that we did? Best case scenario, you kind of adjust yourself a little bit, keep going with the set, and you never look back. Best case scenario.
Yeah.
If you try to do that and it gets worse and it's getting more painful as the set goes on, put the weights down, shake it out, walk around a little bit, and then I would say go back to the same movement and try it again. If it hurts again, okay. Now, what are our options? Are we at a gym where we have like 10 different chest pressing variation machines, or we're in your basement, your home gym? If we're in a gym, I would say try a different exercise that is some kind of horizontal press. You could try elevating the bench like 1 notch, which won't be too much of like a change of where the stimulus is hitting. So you could alter the bench. You could try to do a machine. You could try lowering the weight. You could try limiting range of motion. All those things, throw at it and see if you can just go through some kind of horizontal pressing motion without pain. And once you get to that variation that you did without pain, then you roll with that. And then next time you train, you try it again. If it's hurting like after the gym, like at home, if it's waking up at nighttime, then maybe we need to pull back a little more. But that's where someone like me would come in. Like, it's not your job to figure all that out. Like, just the initial in the gym, try some modifications. If it's getting worse, keep backing off. If it's getting better, then kind of roll with it. But that's where I would come in, kind of work with that, the regressions, the progressions, and kind of like guidance along the way. Any numbness or tingling is usually a hard, like a dark yellow flag, not like a red flag, but it's something that you definitely want to modify or get checked out if you're having those kind of symptoms, like numbness, tingling, pain shooting down your arm or your leg if it's in the leg. That's when you want to definitely get it checked out. But something like this, I would say just what you did is perfect. Audit yourself, walk around a little bit, see how it feels. I know you said initially there wasn't any bruising, which was good.
Bruising. Yeah.
If it's a big tear, usually there'll be some bruising there, so no bruising. When I looked at you in the office, I was just looking to see if there was any like gapping, think of like Popeye, like how his bicep, or I don't know which way it shifted, but there's like a shift and there's like a gap almost like in the muscle belly. Trying to see if there's anything like that going on, like depending on how big the tear is. So you walked around a little bit, saw how it felt. I would say if you decide to end the workout there and go home, totally fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with being too conservative at that point. Like, when something like that happens, if you don't know what to do, go home. Usually doing whatever you can is better than just letting it sit. So if you can walk. If you can't walk, but you can sit on a chair and go like this, do that. Like, whatever you can do to keep it moving, keep blood flowing in there, keep it from getting like super tight, you want to do, but relatively pain-free. And then from there, just what you did, you reach out to someone like myself, and then we kind of go from there. And basically what we talked about initially was we want to calm it down and then build it up. So when it first happens, that thing is like a hot engine, right? So we don't want to go touching it, messing with it too much. We want to kind of calm it down. And the ways that we calm pain and injury down in that acute phase like that, things like icy hot, ice, heat, massage, electrical stimulation, acupuncture, even some like foam rolling, stretching I would hold off on, like direct hamstring stretching, just because if there is some kind of like, irritation or tear in there, you don't really want to be cranking on it. Yeah, and then so those are all ways to calm it down. Usually those kind of things get like crapped on because they're more like short-term placebo type things. But that's exactly what we want. We want to lean into those things initially so that we can start building that thing back up. And that's kind of what we did initially.
Yeah. Nice. So, yeah, man. Yeah, that second day or that first morning, oh man, that was the worst pain.
Yeah.
Because it was just super stiff when I woke up, and I could barely walk. But like once I started moving, it loosened up, I guess. A little bit, and then
I actually want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
So what was your mindset like? Because I know on social media, like it seemed very like it's all good. Like we're gonna get this thing figured out, and we're just gonna take it step by step, deposit those pennies, and let's roll. But like that second day, that second day, like what were you feeling? Like were you as confident as like that initial post, or like what was your mind kind of doing?
The second day when I went to see you that morning,
yeah,
I could walk, which was good.
Yeah.
And I could bend my knee, which was good. So I was like, oh, this is real good. Because if it was worse than that, I think I wouldn't be able to walk. It'd be bruised up. But I think my mentality with it is just like, I was just thinking about the process of like what I need to do to get better.
Yeah.
Really.
So you're focusing on what you could do.
Yeah,
rather
exactly.
than what you couldn't do.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just focused on like, first just seeing you, see what you say. It didn't seem too bad. Like I didn't have to go to the hospital or anything. So I guess that was a good sign in my mind. Yeah, I was just thinking about the process of like how long would it take to recover, which is another question a lot of people ask, like the recovery timetable, and then what exactly I would have to do to just get better, to rehab over time. Because I knew it was gonna take time, and I've been through the injuries in general, so it's like I'm kind of used to it. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I was just thinking about like the I guess the process of it, like what I have to do this week to get better, and then next week, the following weeks, you know what I mean? So that's it, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's easy for me to say that, but I'm not the one that it happened to. Like at the end of the day, like you're the one that put your head down on your pillow and you got to think about this hamstring. And so it's easy for me to say like, like it'll be all right. Mm-hmm. But for you, I'm sure, for the person who's injured, it's always different. So
And then I also tested out certain movements. Like I could extend a little bit, you know what I mean? And I tried squatting a little bit, that gave me confidence that I can actually do stuff. And then I was okay because I could do upper body.
Yep.
So it was just like, I was just trying to stay positive really, because there's no point of just being negative. If I was just gonna, I've been through that pretty much already.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, you're just negative about it and it just brings you in a dark place really. So it's like, you have to stay positive when stuff like that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then I guess that first day when you came in. Basically, one of the first things that I wanted to get across to you was that this is not something that's going to be a career-ending injury. This is not something that's going to be even a season-ending injury. Like, this is something that we're going to be able to sidestep, we're just going to work through, and we should be all right. Like, and then I asked your goals, too. Like, are you doing powerlifting this season? Or,
thankfully I wasn't doing powerlifting. That would probably, be a big hit if I was doing powerlifting, but
Yeah, it would definitely complicate things, because we wouldn't be able to perhaps deadlift. Competition deadlift, conventional deadlift. But the fact that you're bodybuilding and that's your goal, hypertrophy, that's perfect, because we can hit the hamstrings 10,000 different ways other than hip hinging. And that was really the most sensitive thing for you was that hip hinge.
Yeah.
So in the office, I guess first we just talked about like what the injury was, and a hamstring tear. It kind of sounds scary. Like I wanted to make sure you didn't have this image of like a big I use the band in the office like a thick like band that's torn like halfway, and every time you take a step, like you're pulling on that little like tear, making it worse.
That's
like
what I think everyone would think.
I think that's
knowledgeable.
Right. I think that's what most people think.
Yeah,
Especially in the rotator cuff. I hear that a lot. Like they get, they look at a picture on the internet and you see like the rotator cuff muscle like halfway torn, and then every time you go to raise your arm, you just imagine that thing getting like torn more and more.
Piece of paper, right? Like
right.
Just tearing you more and more, right? That's what I thought.
Yeah, exactly. So the way that I usually like to describe it is like a Twizzler. So I think they still have them out today, right?
Yeah, the peel apart Twizzlers.
Yeah. So it's like a thick, exaggerated, but like a thick, like long Twizzler with smaller like strings of Twizzlers in it. So when you eat it, you like pull the individual strings down and you get like the little pieces of candy or whatever. So think of your muscle like that, rather than just like a straight band. Except the hamstring, like think of it like this. So a thick pull and peel Twizzler. And so what Wayne did to his hamstring is really just like maybe a few of those tiny strands are damaged and torn. And keep in mind, that's what happens every time we go to the gym anyway. Like we break down muscle, tear muscles down. We don't give ourselves muscle tears like this, but it's similar. Yeah. They get broken down often, they build themselves back up. Muscle does that. Muscle repairs itself very well. Things like ligaments, like ACLs, or if you sprain a ligament in your ankle, those take a bit longer. Like they don't have great blood supply. They're not. It's not what they do. They don't heal as fast as muscle does. So that was the first thing I wanted to get across to you, because that can kind of almost ease your mind a little bit and be less apprehensive, like to tear that to tear it fully or something. So. And then if you've ever seen the videos of like power lifters popping their bicep, like doing a deadlift,
I've seen that.
Jay Cutler competed in the one Mr. Olympia with a torn bicep, and even Brandon Wattis last year, 2 years ago, I forget when it was. It was 2 years ago. He tore his bicep, and he kept competing that throughout the season. But you can see the little divot,
the gap, right? My friend had the same thing. He tore his bicep. He had like a big gap, and his bicep was just like up here.
So what that usually is not these kind of micro tears that we're talking about. What that usually is from the tendon. So think of that Twizzler now. Again, the Twizzler kind of comes down and funnels into a tendon, like a thick, like I guess like a real thick like rubber band almost. Now if that tears, then forget it. Then the whole Twizzler is going to kind of like curl up. That's typically what happens with those bicep videos. It's like a biceps tendon rupture. Not so much like the muscle just gets cut in half.
Does that happen in the hamstring at all or no?
I've never seen it. I don't know if someone is more versed in like field sports like soccer, football, stuff like that. I don't know if that's more common in that in that like realm, but bodybuilding and weightlifting, I've never seen something like that. So then what we did in the office, first I explained that just to kind of like get the image right, like in your mind. I didn't want you to think that this thing was hanging on by a thread. And then we just saw what we could do. I asked Wayne about his program, what he's doing in the gym, the exercises that he's doing, and we just found ways to not put the hamstring in the lengthened position. So one of the things that we talked about was like a seated hamstring curl. So a seated hamstring curl, you're basically stretching the hamstring at the hip, and then when you're in this position, you're stretching at the knee. So it's a full hamstring stretch and contraction with that exercise. Fantastic like any other time of day, but since we have the injury here and since it's sensitive, you want to try to avoid those things because usually they'll be sensitive and they'll be painful. Not all the time. Sometimes they may feel great. But for you, it seemed like lengthening it would be pretty sensitive. And even when you're at the gym, the knee extension, when you did a full rep of a knee extension, you felt it in your hamstring because it's that same position, right? We're stretching it from the hip, stretching it from the knee. So then what we did was the partials. So we just did the partial range of motion knee extension. So we're still getting the lengthened position of the quads in that exercise. Not fully lengthened because it's on slack at the hip, but the fully lengthened position of the exercise. So we're just getting a great stimulus on the quad, and we're not provoking the hamstring. So that's the best case scenario is we make a little modification, but we keep the training stimulus, which is the goal. So yeah, at the office, checked it out. No bruising, like we said, no gapping. I had Wayne lie on his stomach, and we did like a resisted hamstring curl. So that is the exact position of a lying hamstring curl. And the difference between that and the seated hamstring curl is that we're putting it on slack at the hip. So if you're lying flat and your leg is straight, now the hamstring's on slack at the hip and you're only bending it at the knee. So it's a little bit of a friendlier movement to the hamstrings. And that felt okay. In the office, it felt okay because I wasn't like cranking on it. But then when you tried it at the gym, it was a little bit like, didn't feel great. So then what we said was just put like 75% of the effort through the good side and then 25% on the bad side. And then as we go through the weeks, we'll just put more and more onto the other side.
That's exactly what I did the other day. I was just kind of testing it, and whenever I felt like any sharp pain, I would just put more emphasis on the stronger side. So worked well, for sure. And
then the other movement that you were doing was a hip dominant leg extension.
Leg press.
Leg press.
Yep.
So my initial thought was, try it, like we'll see how it feels. And we had a leg press at the office, and my thought was, all right, if the hip dominant leg press bothers it, let's move the feet down on the platform and do more of a quad dominant leg press. That was my initial thought. But you put your leg up on the leg press, and it was like, you just felt it as soon as you did it. That's similar position to what we're talking about. Like in a leg press, basically your hip is bent, and as you straighten out your knee, you're getting that full stretch of the hamstring again. So it's not too surprising that bothered it as well. So then what we went with was a hack squat.
Hack squat.
So the back is supported. So a normal squat, you'd have to initiate it with some kind of hip hinge, right? So that's obviously was very sensitive for Wayne. So that the hack squat, perfect. You just put your back against the pad, and you're almost like just pistoning like up and down, and not much of a hip hinge. And then we tried that in the office. Modify the depth a little bit on that second day, but it was still pretty sensitive that second day, so we had to modify the depth a little bit. We did some bridges with the leg straight on a ball, which is a really challenging exercise for the hamstrings, and that felt good. And then we did regular bridges on the table with the knees bent, like a hip thrust almost, and those felt good. So from that initial like testing day, we developed a program for you that was very similar to what you're doing, but just a little bit modified. The first day you went to the gym, I would say went pretty much as best as we could have asked for. Not too many unexpected responses to what we did. And now the goal from here out is just finding out how we're going to progress from here. We gotta start somewhere. So I like getting some consistency first before we start changing a lot, but we're just going to kind of go through the process, and the way that we regressed in a stepwise fashion, we're just going to progress very similarly and just, see how things go. And I know you got a good head on your shoulders, and you got Berto in your corner too, so all that is really helpful.
Yeah, it helped too, for sure. The support was real. Even Eric Helms commented on it. He doesn't even follow me, so it's like, oh shit, okay. The whole squad got my back. It's a good feeling though.
Absolutely.
Because like I said, I've definitely been in a headspace where like I got injured, and then it's just like I felt like my life's over type of thing. You know what I mean? Just like what you explained with Eric Helms' bicep thing. So
I was getting frozen yogurt with my wife and my daughter, and I got a message from Eric right when I first joined the team. It was funny, when I first joined the team, I think everyone had an injury, and then they were like, "Nick, we promise we didn't bring you on the team just to ask about our own injuries." But yeah, I was with my wife and my daughter, and I think did I have my daughter? Maybe she wasn't born yet. I forget. But I got a message from Eric, and I was like, "Oh my God, Eric Helms messaging me." I'm like, hold on. I'm like, I gotta take this. And I was like, oh damn, Eric is messaging me about his bicep. Like, I can't mess this up. Like, this is my shot. And
this is before you were on the team?
This was right when I joined the team.
Oh, right when you joined the team. Okay.
So I like now, like, they're dear friends, practically family of mine. So it's very different. But initially, I was like, oh my God, Eric Helms is messaging me. But yeah, I know he initially was feeling pretty like down, and like he was doing strong
It's
man.
a normal thing, man.
For sure.
Especially if you're an athlete competing in sport, some type of sport. Because
But he got through it, and he competed in strongman, Highland Games.
Oh yeah, it was that year.
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember that year. That was random. Like, what the hell? This guy's doing strongman and the Highland Game. That's the one with the skirt, right?
Yeah. I asked him. I think this was. I think I'm getting it correct.
I don't know. You do like all this. I don't want to freaking. Yeah, I don't want to talk about it because I don't know too much about it. So
yeah, he
I don't make it look bad or anything. But I don't know exactly what they do.
I asked him how he did it, and he said, I'm thinking like a curl or something, and he was, picking up a stone, an atlas stone. I think that was how he did it. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll do it. Damn. Because there's a certain technique, so you don't bicep curl.
Yeah,
I believe. Yeah.
I would imagine. Yeah, I'm not really sure, but yeah.
But yeah, man. Yeah, what else? Oh, I have one more question.
Sure.
So, what do you think caused it?
That's a great question.
Yeah, because everyone, a lot of people ask that.
Yeah.
Maybe like 3-4 people asked that. It's like I didn't have an answer. It's just like what I said to him was like that the past few days leading into that training session, I just wasn't getting good sleep. It was Christmas that weekend, that previous weekend. My water intake wasn't as normal as it normally is. I usually drink about a gallon a day. But the past week, I don't know, I was kind of like not thinking about it so much. So that, and then I did a yoga an hour before, and usually I just do yoga on my off days, but I was just kind of like, fuck it, I'm just gonna do yoga. You know what I mean? Like I was there, and my friend was with me, and he was like, yo, let's just do legs. I'm like, all right, let's just do it. Usually I'm just like, no, because I know, from what I know is that static stretching is just not good before weight training. But yeah, you let me know. I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's a good question. I'm glad you asked that, because if we left and you didn't ask me that, I would have been, I would have been mad later.
Yeah.
So, as far as what caused it, all those things you mentioned are possible contributors. So I know I've said countless times on podcasts and things, is that pain can be, and injury are more related to things like sleep, stress, hydration, nutrition, all those things. But I also don't want the pendulum to swing the other way, where now people are apprehensive to train because they had a bad night's sleep, or
exactly,
they're stressed out with work or at home, and they don't want to train because they don't want to get hurt.
They just don't want to do RDLs.
Yeah.
A lot of people told me that. They're like, I don't want to do RDLs anymore. Even my clients, I'm like, yo.
Yeah. So that is not the case. Like those things, think of like a bucket, and we have this bucket, and all those things can be things that we put into the bucket, but they're not one-to-one causes of pain. But the hydration, not that the yoga was bad before, but if it was different, like that's just another thing to put into the bucket, like just a novelty of your pre-workout routine, and just so static stretching. It's okay to static stretch. I don't think you have to, but if you like the way it feels, you feel looser after you stretch, you can totally do your static 20-second hold of stretch before you train, as long as you do some kind of dynamic movement afterwards. So if you do some kind of quick stretching routine, then I would say at least don't go right into your heavy sets. Do some kind of body weight squats or just the bar, and just kind of get that dynamic movement in there. And that has been shown to kind of mitigate any strength or power losses from static stretching. And there's no evidence that it would increase injury risk either. So yeah, if you do your stretching, just make sure you do some kind of dynamic warm up afterwards.
So there's no evidence that static stretching before weight training will make the muscle weaker at all?
There was initially, but they basically had the subjects stretch and then immediately try to do a vertical jump test. And what they found was decrease in performance and power output after that. But then after that study, they got all the headlines and static stretching is bad before training.
Yeah.
There have been studies after that have shown that if you do that dynamic warm up
right after,
it kind of mitigates that.
So was there anything wrong with what I did? I did yoga for an hour, and then right after I trained, took a pre-workout, probably 30 minutes after I did weight training. But before the RDL sets, I did maybe 3 I did the leg press. So I did 3 warm-up sets just leading up to my working sets. Then I did 2 actual working sets, hip dominant. And then once I got to the RDL set, I just threw on my working weight, a lot of people were like, oh, it's because you didn't warm up into that RDL like working weight. And my working weight is like 335, which is normal, light for me. You know what I mean? It's relative. A lot of people are like, oh, that's heavy, it's heavy. But for me, I go a little bit heavier than that normally for working sets. So I purposely backed down because I was doing pauses, and I didn't know how it would feel. So I just did 335, and then I just jumped straight into it. I didn't like do 135, 225, or whatever warm-up sets. Was there anything wrong with that, or I felt like it was cool because I already warmed up like hamstrings and quads with doing all my leg press sets. So
yeah, I don't think it was wrong, and it's individual to everyone. So the fact, if you would have told me that was the first day you didn't start with the bar 135, 225, like if that's what you do every time you train,
all the time,
then I would say it's totally fine. Like you haven't had the injury yet, so like all this time you've been doing the same thing, it must be working. So I don't think that was it. I think the one thing that may, again, just another ingredient in the bucket, may have been maybe it was a little fatigued with the yoga. Like maybe this could be one thing, because yoga, and I don't know what kind you were doing, but usually yoga isn't like, it's intense. Like sometimes like you feel intense. Like you're
especially if you don't do it.
Right. Right. So again, I don't think that's what caused it, but it's just a contributor to the bucket. And then things like sleep, stress, all those things, hydration, they all affect how big our bucket is, and they affect our capacity to train and things like that. So that bucket is always changing. It's not like a constant bucket. So that's kind of the key to longevity is understanding that you have this bucket and how's my capacity today, and how can you auto-regulate like on the spot, and it's not always easy. Like this is a perfect example. Like I wouldn't say there was anything that you did wrong. Not a thing you did wrong. I think it would have happened regardless if you did anything differently. Why? And that's the original question. Like why it happened?
Yeah, why?
We don't know. Like I don't know, and I don't know that it's important. That being said, the only reason I don't care too much about why it happened is because I know I know your training is on point, I know your form is on point, I know your recovery is on, like all those things you have because you've been doing this for a while. I know you previously, I know you're working with 3DMJ. So that's why I'm saying I don't care like what the actual like cause of this was. But if I didn't know you and maybe you were a general population patient or a newer athlete, then I would say, okay, we need to figure out like why this happened. What's your training like? Is it just too much volume? Are you not controlling the remaining deadlift? Are you just kind of bouncing at the bottom? Like those are the things that I would want to look at if this wasn't you. But because it's you, this is, to me, I'm just like, let's just put it behind us and keep moving forward.
Yeah. I think a lot of people want to know that question because they want to know how to prevent something like this. I guess that's another question. It's like, how do you prevent like this type of injury from happening?
Honestly, I would just say smart programming, focus on recovery, focus on your technique. I mean, you do those things, you got anything else that happens is pretty much out of your hands. Freak accidents, like things like this happen. If something like this happens to you and you have all your boxes checked, don't get down on yourself. Like again, it happens. Like we could talk about the top bodybuilders in current times, past times. Everyone deals with something. Like it's just kind of nature of the beast. And the best thing and the goal would be not to try to go through an injury-free or pain-free career. It would be understanding that these things are going to happen sometimes, and learning how to work around it, how to approach it intelligently and maturely, and just kind of keep moving forward and not let these things kind of hold you back. The problem, I think, with the current like healthcare system in the United States anyway, is that a lot of times if you go see a physical therapist about this thing, they will kind of dive into you and try to diagnose like why it happened, and they'll say things like, well, your hips are off a little bit,
a lot of
like,
PTs do that,
like this, and let me do this adjustment to fix your hips. Or they'll say your glutes are not turned on, like you have weak glutes, and
that's so funny. I hear that so commonly,
right? And I'm sure a lot of you have heard similar things. You know, weak glutes, so the hamstrings are doing too much, and now that's why they got overstressed and they tore it. All those things what they do, in my opinion, so first, we don't have any evidence that any of that is true. We don't have evidence that we can measure someone's hips. We don't have evidence that we could adjust someone's hips. And we don't have evidence that adjusting someone's hips is going to help reduce pain or injury. So we can't measure it. We can't change it. And even if we could, it doesn't have any effect on what we're talking about here. The weak glutes and the glute amnesia type thing, and the fact that the hamstrings have to overwork to accommodate for that. I can tell you right now, Wayne does not have weak glutes. Most of us in weightlifting, bodybuilding do not have weak glutes. I don't know where that came from, but unless you have some kind of nerve injury that is shut off your gluteus maximus, you don't have weak glutes. So that's another thing that I want to kind of just dispel, because I know that's often read about, heard about in the online space when it comes to this stuff. Yeah. And then not only is that inaccurate, it just leads down the wrong path. So now if that's the map that we're using, that Wayne has weak glutes and his hamstrings were doing too much work, then the path to recovery is stop going to the gym and come into my PT office, and we're going to do bridges and clamshells and different like glute exercises to kind of wake up the glutes, as opposed to training and going in the gym and modifying the movements and staying in the gym and keeping that training stimulus. Because then if we kind of pull back and just do a bunch of glute activation exercises for 4 weeks, you go back to the gym, it may feel a little better because we haven't done anything for 4 weeks. So it's not, there's no reason for it to hurt. But at the same time, now it's lost so much of that built up capacity that you've had for years of training because we haven't, hit it in 46 weeks or whatever. So just those kind of diving in to kind of diagnose at the tissue level and like why this thing happened, I think it just misleads people. It gives us the wrong map sometimes, and we don't have the tools to be that diagnostic, at least in physical therapy from the outside in, without imaging and all that stuff. So with our eyes, with our hands, our best tools are education and just kind of guiding the athlete through the process.
Yeah, man. Great. That was awesome. I think we can wrap it up there.
Sounds good.
I think we covered up all the questions I wanted to cover. Thanks, Nick, for everything.
It was a pleasure, man.
Yeah, man. Follow us on Instagram, Nick Licamelli, Wayne Carmona, Wayne Carmona _ All right, we're out of here. Nice.
Cool.
Yo, I was worried about the whole time. Okay.